There is a reason the narcissist betrayed you, a real one, and it is not the reason you have been carrying. You were told a different story. Maybe no one said it out loud, but you heard it anyway. That they left because you were not enough. That if you had been easier, softer, more, they would have stayed. You have turned that story over 1,000 times, looking for the flaw in you that made it happen. Stop looking. There is no flaw to find, because that was never the reason. The real reason has nothing to do with your lack. It has to do with something in you they could not survive being near. Something they were drawn to, and then could not bear. They did not walk away because you were too little. They walked away because you were too true. You saw them. Not the image, not the performance. Them. You did not just hear their words. You felt what was underneath them. You did not just accept what was shown, you sensed what was hidden. And a person who has built their whole life on a mask cannot stand in front of a mirror for long. Not because the mirror is cruel, because it is honest. And honesty is the one thing they never learned to survive. That is the shocking part. The very thing that made you worth keeping is the thing that made them run. Your honesty was not a flaw they rejected. It was a light they could not stand in. But none of this was ever an accident. The truth God put in you was never meant to be dimmed for anyone's comfort. You did not carry it into their life to fix them. You carried it because it was yours. And light does not have to try. It only has to be present. Everything hidden then has to decide whether to stay or run. They felt it the moment they got close. Not a plan to change them. A truth they suddenly had to answer. They could have let it make them honest. Instead, they chose to run from it. And running from the truth does not erase it. It only means they now answer for the day they turned away. You thought being left proved something was wrong with you. It proved the opposite. It proved you carried something they were not strong enough to hold. That is the truth this whole story turns on. But it is only the first layer. Because what a person runs from does not stay behind them. It waits. And right now, in the quiet they cannot escape, something has started to catch up to them. God is making sure of it. What that is, and why it is only reaching them now, will come clear, one truth at a time. Before we go any further, do one thing. If you have ever been left and made to believe you were the problem, type the word enough in the comments. Not for them, for you. So you remember which story was the lie. The first truth is the one they felt the moment they met you. It is the reason they were drawn to you, and the same reason they had to run. Truth 1. You were the light they could not stand in. The strength you brought into their life was never loud. It did not come from status or performance or control. It came from somewhere quieter, from being consistent when no one was watching, from telling the truth even when a lie would have been easier, from a steadiness that was rooted in who you are before God. You did not have to prove any of it. You simply were it. And that is rarer than you have ever let yourself believe. Most people perform their goodness. You lived yours quietly, whether or not anyone clapped. And that kind of presence does something specific to a person built on illusion. It does not attack them. It does not accuse them. It just stands there being real. And their unreality starts to show by contrast. Every honest thing about you quietly exposed every performed thing about them. Not because you were trying to. Because light and shadow cannot occupy the same space. And you were carrying light. At first, they were drawn to it. Your calm felt like relief in a life they had made chaotic. Your sincerity felt rare after years of shallow, strategic connection. Something about you felt safe in a way they could not explain and could not manufacture. So they came closer. They leaned into it. They told themselves they could handle it. They may have even admired you more because of what you carried. But attraction was only the beginning. The closer they came, the more your presence revealed what they had spent their whole life hiding. The gap between who they were and who they would have to become to stay kept widening. And that gap creates a pressure a person built on illusion cannot hold for long. You were not playing the games they knew how to win. You did not react on cue. You did not need constant managing. You listened, but you also discerned. You cared, but you did not abandon what was true to keep them comfortable. And a person whose entire identity depends on controlling how they are seen cannot survive being seen clearly. They felt you seeing them, not harshly, not with accusation, just accurately. And for them, accurate was unbearable, because to be seen accurately, they would have to stop performing. And they had performed for so long that they no longer knew who they were without the mask. Your presence did not just make them uncomfortable. It made the whole performance harder to keep up, and the performance was all they had. Light does not have to raise its voice to be a threat to the dark. It only has to keep shining. For everyone who does, evil hates the light, and will not come into the light, because they are afraid their deeds will be exposed. That is not a description of a bad day. It is a description of what happens when a person who lives in hiding is loved by someone who lives in truth. Your honesty pressed on the exact place they had worked hardest to keep dark. And instead of stepping into that light and being changed by it, they chose to get away from the thing shining it. That was the real reason. Not that you shone too harshly, that they could not bear to be seen. So they began to reframe you. Not because you changed, but because they needed relief from what they felt standing near you. Suddenly, you were too intense, too different, too much. But those words were never descriptions. They were defenses. Because if they admitted you were real, grounded, and clear, they would have to admit what they were not. The labels they hung on you were the names they gave to a mirror they could not survive. You were not too much. You were too clear. And clarity is only a threat to someone with something to hide. The parts of you that they walked away from were not your flaws. They were your integrity. The consistency that unsettled them was not coldness. It was character. The truth that made them uncomfortable was not cruelty. It was light. And the fact that they could not stand in it says everything about what they were hiding, and nothing about what you were worth. Read that again, slowly. Their inability to stay was a report on them. It was never a verdict on you. God did not put that light in you so it could be dimmed to keep a liar comfortable. He did not give you a truthful heart so you could apologize for it every time it made a dishonest person nervous. The light was never the problem. It was the one thing in the room that could not be controlled, and that is exactly why they had to leave it. They will tell themselves they left because of something you did. But underneath, in the place they do not say out loud, they know. They did not run from your faults. They ran from your light. Truth, too. They did not choose someone better. They chose fear. There comes a point in every real connection where the pretending can no longer hold. It is not loud. There is no announcement. But inside, a person knows the illusion has run out of room. They reach that point with you. Up until then, they could move between who they were and who they pretended to be. They could keep parts of themselves hidden and still enjoy what you offered. They could receive your patience without explaining why they kept testing it. They could receive your loyalty without asking whether they were giving the same thing back. They could enjoy being trusted without looking too closely at whether they were living in a way that deserved that trust. For a while, that arrangement worked for them. But real closeness eventually asks questions pretending cannot answer. The closer they got to you, the less space there was to hide in. Your consistency left no shadows for them to disappear into. And that is where the choice appeared. Not a choice between you and another person. A deeper one. A choice between becoming someone honest or protecting the version of themselves they had always relied on. Between growth and avoidance. Between the truth your presence required and the fear that truth stirred up. That fear was never what it looked like. It was not fear of you. You were never the threat. It was fear of being seen, fear of losing control, fear of no longer being able to hide behind the image they had spent years building. Because being known is very different from being admired. Admiration lets a person control what you see. Being known does not. Being known means somebody has seen the good words and the contradictions, the promises and the behavior, the tenderness and the moments when that tenderness disappeared. And eventually, a person has to decide whether they want real closeness badly enough to become honest inside it. That was the decision standing in front of them. For a person whose whole identity is built on managing how they appear, being truly known can feel unbearable. Staying with you would have asked for the three things they had spent a lifetime avoiding. Honesty, where they had always used control. Consistency, where they had always used manipulation. Accountability, where they had always used avoidance. And every one of those things requires the same root they never grew: humility. The willingness to admit that something in them had to change. Not because you demanded perfection. You did not. You were asking for something much simpler, for words to mean what they said, for promises to matter after the moment they were made, for hurt to be acknowledged instead of explained away, for love to carry responsibility with it. That is not an impossible standard. That is what real relationship requires. But when someone has survived by protecting their image instead of correcting their behavior, even a reasonable request can feel like pressure. Surrender was never in their vocabulary. So your presence was not received as an invitation. It was experienced as a threat. And when a person feels that kind of internal threat, they do not always fix the source. Sometimes they remove whatever keeps bringing the truth back into view, even when that means pushing away the person who loved them sincerely. Even when that person was never trying to expose them. Even when all you wanted was something real. So when the moment came, they did not agonize the way you would have. They moved fast. They created distance. And then they built a story that made the distance feel justified. You may have watched them turn cold almost overnight and wondered what you missed. You missed nothing. What changed was not your value. What changed was how close they were getting to something they did not want to face. That speed was not proof they never cared. It was proof of how badly they needed distance from what they were starting to feel. Because distance can create temporary relief. If they do not have to answer your questions, they do not have to explain the contradictions. If they do not have to look at your hurt, they can avoid thinking about what caused it. If they can make you the problem, they do not have to look too closely at the choice they made. And for a while, that can feel easier than changing. But easier and better are not the same thing. What that means about you is the opposite of what you were told. They did not leave because you failed some test. They left because staying meant taking one, and they already knew they would not pass. Their leaving was not a verdict on your worth. It was a confession of their limit. An old story has to die right here. The patience you showed them was not weakness. The fact that you stayed as long as you did was not foolishness. You were trying to give something real a chance to become real on both sides. And God does not confuse patience with permission. Your willingness to forgive did not mean they had permission to keep hurting you. Your willingness to understand did not make you responsible for what they refused to understand about themselves. What you called being too forgiving, God saw in the full context of what you were trying to preserve. You were not wrong for hoping honesty would eventually meet honesty. You were not wrong for believing that love should be able to survive the truth. You were the one willing to stay in truth while they were afraid of what truth would require. Strength is not the ability to walk away untouched. Sometimes strength is remaining honest when dishonesty would protect your pride. Sometimes strength is admitting where you were wrong. Sometimes strength is staying humble enough to let God correct you. That was the door they were standing in front of, because through your steadiness, God had set a door in front of them, a door into a more honest life than they had ever lived, not a door into perfection, a door into truth, into responsibility, into the kind of relationship where they could no longer survive by controlling the story every time something uncomfortable came to the surface. But God does not force repentance. He does not force humility. He does not drag someone into truth while they are determined to protect a lie. The door can be open, and a person can still refuse to walk through it. That is what choice means. And they chose the familiar dark over the unfamiliar light. They chose what protected them in the moment over what might have changed them in the long run. That was not something done to them. That was something they decided. They may spend a long time calling it your fault. They may need that explanation because the alternative asks a much harder question. What if you were not the problem? What if leaving did not prove they were right? What if the thing they were actually escaping was the person they would have had to become if they stayed? That question does not disappear just because they refuse to answer it. They were not running from you. They were running from who they would have had to become to keep you. And that fear did not end the story. It only decided which side of the door each of you would end up on. But a person rarely walks away alone. The third truth is whose voices they chose to believe. Truth 3. They did not turn on you alone. They were helped. The betrayal did not form in a vacuum. It was shaped, fed, slowly made to feel reasonable. And it happened because at some point, they started listening to the wrong voices. Not to what they knew of you directly. Not to what they had felt with their own hands, but to what other people suggested, implied, and projected onto you. A person who is already unstable inside is easy to reach. Outside voices do not have to be accurate to work on them. They only have to confirm a fear that is already there. They only have to give words to the discomfort the person did not want to face alone. So the story about you started to change. What once felt genuine began to feel questionable. What once felt like safety began to feel like pressure. What once felt like love began to feel like too much. Not because you became something different. You did not change at all. You were the same person they had once been drawn to. They simply let other people hand them a new lens to see you through. And a lie repeated by enough voices starts to feel like a memory. Slowly, the person those voices described replaced the person you actually were in their mind. And every doubt those voices offered was a doubt they were relieved to accept. Because agreeing with the crowd was easier than defending what was real. Easier than standing alone in the truth of what you actually were. Easier than risking judgment from people whose approval they needed more than they needed you. C.S. Lewis had a name for this pull. He called it the inner ring. The desire to be on the inside of the circle. to belong, to not be left out. And he warned that this desire, more than almost any other, will make an otherwise decent person do things they know are wrong. Not out of hatred, out of the fear of standing outside the group. That is exactly what happened here. They were not handed proof against you. They were handed permission. Permission to do the thing the fear already wanted to do. And they took it, because taking it meant they did not have to stand alone. But the voices were never the real failure. There will always be voices. There will always be people willing to misread what they cannot understand. The problem was that they had no ground of their own to stand on. A person rooted in truth does not abandon it the moment it becomes inconvenient. They do not turn on what is right just because a crowd misread it. But standing firm requires courage, and courage was the one thing they never built. So instead of protecting what was real, they distanced themselves from it. They picked up the same language, the same doubts, the same distorted version handed to them. And little by little, they talked themselves into believing that leaving you was justified. That is how betrayal actually happens. Not in one dramatic burst of hatred, in a slow drift of agreement with things that were never true. It only gets heavier from here, not lighter. At a certain point, they knew. They knew who you had been to them. They knew the difference between the truth and the version they were being sold. And they chose the version anyway. Not because they were forced, because the version let them belong, and belonging felt safer than being right. It is one thing to be deceived. It is another to sense the truth, feel it press against you, and choose the comfortable lie because the truth would cost you a crowd. That is not confusion. That is a decision. None of this lowers what you were. Let this land all the way. What was real in you never needed their agreement to stay real. Their doubt did not lower your worth by a single degree. It only revealed who was willing to stand for the truth and who would fold the moment it cost them something. You were not diminished when they agreed with the wrong voices. You were simply shown who they had been all along. And while a crowd was busy deciding what you were worth, God was not taking a vote. He does not need a room full of people to confirm what He placed in you. His estimate of your value never went up for discussion. It was settled long before they ever doubted it, and it did not move when they did. If someone ever walked away from you after listening to other people instead of listening to you, this next moment is for you. Type the word "settled" in the comments. Not to argue with them. To mark that your worth was never theirs to put to a vote. Because in following the wrong voices, they let go of something they will never be able to replace. And that is the fourth truth. Truth 4. What they walked away from does not come twice. Some moments carry more weight than they look like they do. They arrive quietly. A conversation. A choice to stay or go. Nothing about them announces how much is at stake. But underneath, they are the moments that decide the direction of a life. You were one of those moments in theirs. Not because you were perfect. You were not asked to be. Perfect was never the point. Real was the point. But because of what you carried, a depth that most people never develop, a consistency they had almost never been shown, a kind of truth that does not bend itself to make a dishonest person comfortable. They felt it, even if they could never put it into words. There was a recognition, somewhere they did not admit out loud, that this was different. That what stood in front of them was not the usual shallow exchange. That this was the rare thing, the connection that could have changed the whole shape of their life. And that is exactly what made it cost so much. Because real opportunities always ask for something in return. They ask for presence, for honesty, for the willingness to rise to a higher standard than the one you have been living by, for the courage to step out of old patterns and into something more true. They were not willing to pay that. So when the moment came, they reached for what was easy instead of what was rare. They created distance. They told themselves something else would come along. They convinced themselves this was not as significant as it felt. That was the miscalculation, because not everything in life is replaceable. There are connections that are common, and there are connections that are once. People who pass through a life without changing it, and people who arrive at the exact moment something could shift, if only they are received. You were not common in their life. You were the once. And they treated the once like it would come around again. It will not. Not in the same form, not with the same depth, not with the same meaning. What they had with you was specific. It was not a category of person they can go find another version of. It was you, and there is only one of you. For a while, they will not feel the size of it. Distance always brings a false relief at first. Without the pressure of your truth, everything feels lighter. They return to the familiar, to the shallow, to the easily managed. And they tell themselves they made the right call. But the ease does not last, because what once felt like freedom slowly starts to feel like something is missing. Other connections do not carry the same weight. Other people do not see the way you saw, or steady the way you steadied. They will meet people who agree with everything and understand nothing, people who reflect their image back without ever touching what is real. And it will feel at first like the easier thing they always wanted. Then it will feel like sitting in a room full of mirrors and no windows. Because it is one thing to be surrounded. It is another to be known. You knew them. That is what they traded away, and it is not sold twice. The story wants to hand you the wrong role. Refuse it. You were not the one who lost something rare that day. You were the rare thing. They were the one who lost it. A person's failure to hold you was never a measurement of your value. It was a measurement of their reach. The fact that they could not keep what you were does not shrink what you are. It only shows how far short of you they fell. They did not lose you because you were forgettable. They lost you because they were not big enough to hold something that real. And that is not a wound in you. That is a fact about them. One thing makes the loss complete. What they could not recognize, God never once misplaced. He knew exactly what he had set in front of them. He knew the weight of what they were being offered. They looked at something priceless and called it optional. Heaven did not agree with their appraisal. While they were busy deciding you were replaceable, God had already marked you as one of a kind. They threw away the once, and a person cannot unthrow what they have already let fall. No apology reaches back and catches it. No change of heart rewinds the moment their hand opened. But losing something is not the same as being free of it. Because when the distractions run out and the noise finally goes quiet, one more truth is waiting. And it is the one they cannot outrun. Truth 5. The shame does not arrive on time. It arrives too late. There comes a point when the distraction stops working. No more noise to fill the space. No more voices to agree with them. No more clever way to reframe what they did. Just silence. And in the silence, the truth they outran finally catches up and begins to speak. At first, it is quiet, a thought that returns at night, a memory that feels heavier than it used to, a sense that something was not handled the way it should have been. But it does not fade. It grows, because avoided truth does not leave. It waits. And when it finally rises, it does not come as comfort. It comes as clarity. They begin to see it without the fog they hid behind. They see how you actually showed up. They see the consistency, the patience, the honesty they once took for granted. They see a person who told them the truth even when a lie would have kept the peace. And they measure that against every replacement who only ever told them what they wanted. And then they see their own response next to it. The distance, the avoidance, the choice to run instead of stay. And the contrast is unbearable, because there is no one left to blame for it. This is where regret turns into something heavier. Regret can still protect the ego. Regret says, I made a mistake. Shame does not let them off that easily. Shame says, I failed at something that mattered, and I am the one who failed it. It stops being about a lost relationship. It becomes about who they now know themselves to be. And the cruelest part is the timing. This clarity did not come when it could have changed anything. It came after the distance, after the decision, after the door was already shut. They understand what you were now. But understanding arrived with nowhere left to go. There is no action that reverses the moment. So they sit with it. They sit with the awareness that they were handed something real and chose fear. None of this is here, so you can stand over their pain and count it as a win. Their shame is not a trophy for you. It is simply the natural weight of a person meeting the truth after the time to act on it has passed. That weight is real, but it is not yours to hold. And this is the line you have to draw and not cross back over. Their shame is not your assignment. You were never called back to carry a truth they refused while it stood right in front of them. You are not responsible for softening their reckoning. You are not required to reopen a door just because they are finally sorry it closed. Their reckoning belongs to them. Your freedom belongs to you. Those two things were never meant to be traded back. It would be so like the old pattern to feel their pain and rush to fix it, to read their regret as your cue to make it better. For years, their discomfort was your emergency. The moment they hurt, you moved, no matter what it cost you. That reflex was trained into you, and it is exactly what you get to lay down now. Their remorse is not a summons. You do not owe your peace to their regret. Feeling sorry for someone is not the same as owing them access. Compassion can watch from a distance and never once walk back into the room. God is not absent while their shame catches up, but He is not driving it in to destroy them either. He is simply no longer holding a lie in place for their comfort. That is all He is doing. He stopped covering it. He let what was always true finally be felt. For years, that lie stood between them and the weight of what they did, and He allowed it to stand. Now He simply steps back, and the truth sits down where the lie used to sit. A God who loves the truth will not prop a lie up forever, not even the one that lets someone feel fine about leaving you. So the truth arrives, and it arrives late, and it arrives in the quiet. And they finally understand what they threw away at the exact moment they can do nothing about it. But that closed door was never shut by fate. It was not the universe balancing a score. It was shut by a choice they made with their own hands. And what that choice means for you is not sorrow. It is the beginning of the way out. So a door is closed now, and it matters who closed it. You were taught, somewhere along the way, to read a closed door as a punishment, as proof you did something wrong, as a sign you should knock harder. Set that down. Some doors do not close by accident, and they do not close because a nameless universe is keeping score. There is no karma quietly balancing the books behind the scenes. This door closed for one reason. They shut it, with their own hand, on purpose. And a door shut by a choice cannot be reopened by regret. This is the wall they are about to run into, again and again. They may feel the pull to reach back. They may want to explain, to soften it, to test whether you have gone soft. They may start to believe that now, finally, things could be different. But wanting back in is not the same as being let back in. Desire is not access. Understanding a door does not reopen a door. And feeling sorry it closed does not hand them the key to it. They made the choice when the choice was theirs to make. The time to keep you was when you were standing right in front of them. Not now, from the other side of a decision they already finished making. The attempt to reach back tends to come in a form worth recognizing, so it never catches you off guard. It rarely arrives as an apology. It comes as concern that is really curiosity. It comes as a casual message that pretends the wound never happened. It comes through someone else, sent to see if the door still gives a little when pushed. And every one of those approaches is asking the same quiet question. Is there still a way in? This time, they find their answer at a wall. The number leads nowhere. The mutual friend stays out of it. The old routes that always worked before end at a boundary you no longer feel guilty for keeping. Not one of those doors gives, because you finally stopped holding them open out of habit. The old you needs to hear this slowly. Their wanting back does not create an obligation in you. You are allowed to forgive them completely and still leave the door shut. Those are not opposites. Forgiveness sets down the weight you were carrying. It does not hand them a new set of keys to your life. You can wish them well and still not let them near you. You can hold no bitterness and still hold the boundary. Compassion was never meant to walk you back into the room that nearly ended you, because releasing someone from your resentment is a gift you give yourself. Handing them back access is a risk you take with your future. Those are two entirely different things, and they were never meant to be traded for each other. So let them stand at a door that will not open. That is not cruelty. That is the natural shape of a choice they made. You do not owe them a second door because they finally understood the first one. And this is where the whole story turns. Because the same door that closes on them is the one that opens for you. Their exit was not the end of your road. It was the clearing of it. Every ounce of energy you spent explaining yourself is suddenly yours again. Every hour you gave to being misunderstood is handed back to you. The space they used to occupy is not empty. It is open. And open is where a new life begins. You start to notice how much lighter a room is when you are not managing someone in it. You make a decision without running it past a mood. You say a true thing without bracing for how it will be used against you. You breathe out in your own home, and no one takes it as an invitation to take more. None of that was available to you while the door was open. All of it becomes yours the moment it closes. The two things move together because they are the same motion. Their control weakens, and your independence returns. Their access closes, and your peace stops being something you have to defend. They lose the ability to reach into your life, and you gain the ability to build one they cannot touch. You were not left behind when that door shut. You were let out. They are not standing behind a door you locked out of spite. They are standing behind a door they chose. And you do not have to spend one more night on the other side of it, knocking, hoping to be understood. You were never the one who had to be understood. You are free to turn around and walk. And you do not walk away alone. God is not holding that door shut out of anger. He is not standing there to punish them or to make a point. He is holding your hand on the other side of it, walking you forward. The closing was theirs. The leading is his. He let the door do what a choice already decided, and then he turned you toward the way out. You spent so long facing the wrong direction, facing the door, facing the past, facing the person who left. Turn around. What is behind you is a choice that is finished. What is in front of you is the thing they're leaving actually proved. So let the question from the beginning finally be answered. The one that started growing the moment they left. What was wrong with me? Nothing. That is the answer the whole story has been walking toward. Nothing was wrong with you. You were left because you were too real to be kept small, too honest to be managed, too bright to sit quietly inside someone else's performance. Being left was never proof that something in you failed. It was proof of something they could not control, and could not fake, and could not carry. Read that slowly, because it undoes years of the wrong story. They did not walk away from your flaws. They walked away from the one thing they could not bend to their comfort, your truth. And what they walked away from was not the end of your life. It was the clearing of it. Behold, I will do a new thing. Now it shall spring forth. I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. That is not a sentence about them. It is a sentence about the kind of God who was standing behind you the whole time. He is not a God who runs out of roads. When the familiar way closes, he does not stand there mourning it. He opens a way where there was no way. He makes rivers show up in the places that looked like nothing but dry ground. And the wilderness they left you in was never your ending. It was the exact ground he chose to build the new way on. While they sit with what they threw away, he is already moving on your behalf, not as a reward for surviving them. You do not have to earn your way out of what they did. It is simply the direction he always intended for someone, too real to belong in that old, small place. The delay you lived through was not God forgetting you. It was God keeping the answer somewhere their hands could not reach it. Had the door opened while they still had access, they would have tried to walk through it with you. They would have claimed it, managed it, found a way to make it about them. So he waited until the wrong hands were gone. And now the way opens, clean, with no one standing in it who does not belong. The new thing rarely looks like fireworks. It looks like a morning you wake up and their name is not the first thought. It looks like a decision made from peace instead of fear. It looks like a door you never expected, opening at a time you had stopped watching for it. It looks like ground that was dry for years, quietly starting to hold water again. You may not see the whole road at once. You are not meant to. You are only meant to take the next step and watch it hold your weight. Your value was never in the hands of the person who could not hold it. It never dropped when they let go of you. A thing does not lose its worth because someone was too small to carry it. The gold is still gold in the hand that fumbles it. Real recognition is coming from a different direction now. From people who see you and do not flinch at the sight. From connections that do not require you to shrink to stay in them. From a life where being fully known is safe instead of dangerous. You are moving toward the rooms where your truth is not a threat. It is a welcome, where your honesty is not called too much, but finally called safe, where the depth that frightened them is the very thing that draws the right people close. The people worth having were never scared of your light. They were looking for it. There is a freedom past all of this, and most people never reach it. You do not need their apology to be free. You do not need them to finally understand what they lost. Your healing was never waiting on their realization. If it were, they would still control you, just from a greater distance. Freedom does not come from them finally seeing your worth. It comes from the one who never once misjudged it. God had the right number on you the entire time. While they were still deciding whether you were enough, heaven had already ruled. And his ruling does not wait for their agreement to take effect. The two things arrive in the same moment, moving in opposite directions. They are getting the clarity too late to use it. You are getting the way forward exactly on time. They understand what you were now that they cannot have it. You are discovering what you are, right as your life opens up to hold it. Their part of the story is a door that has closed. Your part is a road that has just begun. The same event that leaves them behind is the one that sets you loose. Do not mistake what God is doing here. He is not only ending what they held over you. That would be mercy enough, but it is not the whole of it. He is opening what he kept for you all along, the peace he protected while you were too tired to protect it, the future he guarded while the wrong people tried to spend it, the version of your life that could only begin once their grip was gone. He was never only removing them. He was making room. Everything the connection cost you, he has been quietly holding in reserve. The trust they spent, the confidence they chipped at, the years they made you doubt yourself. None of it was wasted, and none of it is gone for good. He does not just close one chapter and leave you standing in an empty hallway. He clears the wrong thing out so the right thing has somewhere to arrive. You spent so long believing the best of your life happened before they left, that the door closing was the end of your good days. It was the opposite. The door closing was the sound of your real life finally clearing its throat to begin. And the most freeing part is this. You do not have to wait for them to understand any of it to start living it. Their understanding was never the key. It never was. You are already holding the only permission you ever needed. So this is where the story sets down, and where yours picks up. There is an assignment in all of this, but it is not the one the old you would reach for. There is an assignment in all of this, but it is not the one the old you would reach for. Your assignment is not to go back and prove your worth to someone who could not see it. It is not to wait by a closed door for their shame to ripen into an apology. It is not to keep a quiet watch over their regret, checking whether they have finally understood. That is not healing. That is the leash, just held from farther away. Let it go. You were never assigned to manage their reckoning. You were assigned to walk into the life on the other side of it. So do the harder, freer thing. Stop refreshing the past for signs that they miss you. Stop rehearsing the speech you would give if they ever came back. Stop measuring your worth by whether the person who dropped it ever notices it is gone. Their understanding is not the prize. Their apology is not the door. You already walked through the only door that mattered when you stopped waiting for them to open it. While they sit with what they threw away, God is doing something quieter and far better with you. He is not staging a scene for them to witness. He is placing you slowly and carefully where you were always meant to be received, among people who do not need you to shrink, in rooms where your truth is an asset, not an accusation, in a life where being fully seen finally feels like safety instead of exposure. That is the restoration. Not that they suffer, that you are finally home. And home may not arrive all at once. It may come as one steady friendship, one honest conversation, one ordinary day that does not hurt. Do not rush it, and do not doubt it, because it is quiet. The best things God rebuilds, He rebuilds gently, in a peace you will almost not trust at first. Let yourself trust it anyway, and carry the answer with you, the one this whole thing came to give you. You believed, for a long time, that being left proved something was wrong with you. It never did. Being left proved you were carrying something they were not strong enough to hold. The real reason they betrayed you was never your lack. It was your light, and your light was never theirs to keep. It was only ever on loan to a room that refused to see it. Now it comes home with you, where it belongs. You do not have to become less to be easy to love. You do not have to dim the very thing God lit in you, so a person who fears the light can feel comfortable. The right people are not looking for a smaller version of you. They are looking for exactly what made the wrong person run. The honesty that was too much for them is what someone else has been praying to find. The depth they could not handle is the depth someone else has been waiting their whole life for. You were never too much. You were simply standing in the wrong room, being measured by the wrong hands. So walk forward and do not look back for permission. The one who left already told you everything you need to know about their reach. God has already told you everything you need to know about your worth. Believe the one who never got it wrong. Before you go, take the answer and make it yours out loud. If this reached something in you tonight, type the words, "My light," in the comments. Not as a message to them, as a line you draw for yourself that says you finally know why they had to leave and that you are done apologizing for it. And if you want to keep walking through this, healing the parts of you they made you doubt, subscribe and stay close. There's more of this road ahead, and you were never meant to walk it without being reminded who you are. They lost the light. You get to live in it. Go and do exactly that.